The film begins with a group of people in a wood. They search for a young missing couple in that area. Something unusual draws attention: a bell with a strange symbol that marks the entrance to a cave. Two dogs from the search party end up entering that place and spend some time watching a mysterious well. Roots emerge from it and spread across the walls, and since they are exhausted and thirsty, the animals drink from the stagnant water. While they do this, it becomes clear that someone or something watches them. We soon discover that these dogs belong to a man who participates in the search. He becomes anxious, since the animals did not return. When they finally appear, their behavior is different. They remain motionless, only staring at each other and growling. The owner finds the attitude strange but pays little attention, returns home and places on the table a clipboard with the poster of the missing couple before going to sleep. Outside, the dogs continue to stare at each other as if they would attack at any moment, until one pounces on the other, but the scene is not shown. Inside the house, the man's daughter becomes irritated by the noise and asks her father to check what is happening. He takes the flashlight and confronts something horrible. One of the dogs devoured the other and now looks like an empty shell, with eyes glowing in a frightening way. Sometime later, we meet Tim, who looks at some photos with his girlfriend Millie. Among them, he finds an image with his parents that unsettles him. Millie enters the room and asks him to hurry. We discover the couple recently reconciled, and since Millie needs to return to her hometown in the countryside, Tim agreed to accompany her. Friends organize a farewell party, and during the celebration, Kath, Millie's best friend, asks if she is sure she wants to live with Tim even after everything they've been through. Millie confirms she does, but Kath is unconvinced and insists, questioning whether Tim would really agree to live in such a small place. Millie replies that he is excited and promises to test that night. Meanwhile, Tim talks with his girlfriend's brother and a friend. The brother mentions that their band needs a guitarist. Since Tim works with music, he shows interest, but is soon discouraged when the guy says he won't be suitable since he will move far away. Tim tries to argue that the town is close and he can go to rehearsals, but Millie interrupts, calling him to speak in front of everyone. Unfortunately for him, his girlfriend reveals that the place they're going is quite far away. Tim tries to cover it up with a joke that it's close, but we know it's all just a test. Then, in front of their friends, Millie surprises them by proposing to Tim. He, still thinking about the previous proposal, takes a while to respond. Millie is bothered by her boyfriend's reaction in front of everyone and stands up, but Tim, even though he doesn't seem willing, says he accepts the proposal. Later, already in bed, he tries to explain that he didn't know how to react. Everything happened too quickly. Millie does not argue. She only asks if he still wants to move with her to her hometown. Tim comments that it's a bit late to back out, but Millie says if they separate now it will be easier, because since they reconciled, he hasn't been the same. The guy does not disagree, but promises to try to make up for it when they live together. Millie seems dissatisfied with the answer, but chooses to sleep. Tim, in turn, cannot rest, and Millie starts saying strange things, claiming she cannot sleep with them in the room. Tim does not understand whom she refers to until he looks ahead and faces a terrifying woman. He tries to cover himself with the sheet, but the creature appears right in front of him. We soon realize it was only a nightmare, and in the morning they are already in the new house. Tim leaves the bedroom and finds Millie awake. The couple enters the residence, and he starts rummaging through objects while Millie goes to the bathroom. Suddenly, Tim smells a strong odor and asks if his girlfriend smells it too, but she answers no because she is busy. He notices the source of the smell and climbs to the second floor, looking at a light fixture. Taking a ladder to remove it, the smell intensifies, and putting his hand into the hole, he finds a dead rat. Disgust overwhelms Tim, who takes a bag to remove the animal, but he is distracted by Millie and notices one of the animals showing signs of life, frightening him. Upon releasing the animal onto the floor, he discovers there was more than one, all tied by the tail, leaving him intrigued. Tim goes out to dispose of the animals, and Millie asks how he knew where they were. He makes a strange expression and does not answer. Millie starts her new job and meets a woman named Carol, who shows herself unpleasant and treats her rudely. Jamie, a colleague, soon intervenes, asking her not to mind and explaining that Carol is bitter. He shows interest in Millie and asks if she is settling in the place with Tim, making her uncomfortable due to the relationship crisis. Jamie appears happy with the ambiguous answer and introduces himself as a neighbor, offering help if they need a local guide. At night, Tim rehearses his songs, and Millie invites him to spend time together, but he is focused on work. Millie notices her partner's lack of attention and shows dissatisfaction, which Tim notices. The next day, the couple decides to explore the area and reaches the end of the trail, discovering there is no more path. Tim is unconcerned and enters the wood, when again, a bell with the same strange symbol appears. Millie warns she doesn't want to appear in the papers if they get lost in the forest. Tim walks a little more and finds another bell like the previous one. He believes it is a kind of marking and tells Millie everything is fine. A few hours later, a storm hits the area and the couple get lost in the wood. Tim takes out his phone to use the compass, but realizes he doesn't know how to operate it. While they argue how to get out, he moves and slips, falling partially into the entrance of that same cave, clutching the bell. Millie, trying to save him, lets go of his hand, and now he holds on with only one hand until he slips completely and falls inside the cave. Millie also slips and falls with him. Millie asks if Tim is okay. He replies, yes, but his only concern is his phone, which irritates Millie, who this time doesn't hide her frustration. Seeing she is angry, Tim apologizes and asks if Millie is okay, and she replies yes, and the two begin to look for a way out. Tim, bothered by strange sensations, asks if she also feels that, and this time, Millie completes saying it seems the place is full of people. She wants to leave as soon as possible, but Tim thinks it's better to wait for the storm to pass. He lights a lighter to explore the surroundings and wonders what all that is. Sometime later, Tim tries to make a fire but cannot, and Millie complains of thirst. We realize they are sitting right on the mouth of that mysterious well. Tim takes his thermos from the backpack and suggests they drink that water, but Millie refuses to risk it. He insists, saying that given the situation, it is the only option, and when he goes to drink, we have the same sensation as before, as if someone watches him through the water. Later, they manage to light a fire, and Millie asks why Tim carries a lighter. Before he answers, she pulls out a cigarette. He laughs and asks how long it's been since she started smoking again, and she reveals it was soon after the move. Millie promises that when they get out of there, they will quit the habit for good, and Tim agrees. During the conversation, she mentions she can't stop thinking about the rats he found, which leaves the guy thoughtful. Millie asks what's wrong, and Tim then tells a childhood story. He says one day his father asked him to clean the room because of an unbearable smell. Despite cleaning, the father always complained the odor persisted, until one day he lost control and destroyed the whole room. The strange thing was that there was nothing there, until on another occasion, the father found a dead rat inside the lamp where it had nested, and every time Tim turned on the light, the body was slowly roasted. Millie is shocked and asks why she had never heard that, and he answers he only remembered when he found the rats in the new house. He continues saying that when he was a child, he again felt that smell, but this time, it came from his parents' room. The closer he got, the stronger it became, until upon opening the door, he found his mother with a macabre smile, and his father dead beside her in horrible conditions. Millie is terrified, and Tim admits he never knew how his father died, but believes it was linked to that constant stench, and that by removing the rats in the house, it seems he brought that thing back to haunt him. The couple decides to sleep, but soon we hear something growling and approaching. Tim wakes, begins to breathe deeply, and everything goes silent, until he notices that with every breath the cave itself reacts, and a gigantic heart rises inside it, leaving Tim in complete terror. He looks to the side and sees Millie breathing deeply, almost suffocating. When he is about to help her, frightening hands pull him, but in fact, Millie is waking him. She says only he could sleep in a cave. Tim asks what time it is, and Millie discovers her phone fell into the water. Tim then says it's time to go home, and his girlfriend agrees. But they soon realize their legs are glued together. Before trying to free themselves, Millie asks what the hell that is, and Tim answers it might be some kind of mold. Before leaving, Tim, by chance or perhaps on purpose, ends up taking more of that slime. Soon after, they begin to climb the cave and finally manage to get out of that place. While the couple celebrates leaving that place, Tim's leg is badly injured, but he barely notices. The couple returns home, and Millie asks for a massage after spending the night in that cave, but the boyfriend initially refuses. Millie says she deserves it, and he, with no options, agrees. While giving the massage, he starts having another of his delusions and doesn't even notice he is hurting his partner. Millie screams at him, and he returns to reality. She asks if he was trying to be funny or something like that, but he is speechless, and then says he is just tired. Millie comments he is very strange and says she will go to town. He asks if he can go along, but she refuses, saying he better rest. Millie gets into her car to go to town while Tim stays home and goes to take a shower. We notice something strange in his behavior. As soon as she turns on the vehicle, he turns on the shower, and when she starts to leave with the car, Tim's body reacts in sync, seeming connected. Every time the car moves or accelerates, his body reacts, to the point where Millie drives on a straight road and Tim's face is pressed against the wall, cracking the ceramic, and he finally comes out of the trance with his face covered in blood. Tired of all that, Tim decides to consult a psychologist, tells the occurrences to the doctor, and he asks if maybe anxiety or a panic attack have to do with what he feels. He says it's not that, but the therapist insists maybe it is, given the considerable family history of mental illness, and even mentions his mother's case. The professional insists on talking about the incident, but Tim replies he already had that conversation before and claims he is not like his mother. Then the psychologist prescribes a medicine to calm Tim's nerves and says they were lucky to have come out of the forest alive. Tim finds it strange and asks why, and the doctor replies that a few months ago another young couple also got lost there and never appeared again. Tim decides to research the disappearance of the couple and searches the internet. He looks at some photos of Kari and her boyfriend until Millie enters the room. She asks if everything is ready for tomorrow's outing, but he is distant. Millie says they can cancel if he doesn't feel well. She sees he is searching for other girls, but he denies that's what she thinks and comments on the disappearances. While they talk about how terrible it would be to die in such a place, someone knocks on the door. Millie opens, and it is Jamie, who wants to welcome the couple. Jamie brings a bottle of wine for them, and as he is about to leave, Millie invites him in to drink with them. Millie recounts the experience they had, and Jamie remarks that the phone has a compass, which makes Tim a little embarrassed, but he quickly changes the subject. He comments he felt a somewhat occult vibe in the place. Jamie laughs and Millie asks her boyfriend not to exaggerate. Tim questions how she cannot trust him since she also experienced it. She smiles to appear not to be going crazy. Tim reports the grotto and how there were church pews and a very strange bell. Jamie comments that long ago there was a chapel at that spot, but as it was abandoned, the space collapsed and ended up inside that grotto. Tim notices Jamie and Millie are close, and when Jamie tries to take the wine, Tim quickly grabs it from his hand and serves his companion, which embarrasses Jamie a bit. To break the mood, Jamie says the meal is delicious. This triggers another argument for the couple. Millie throws some truths at Tim, and he responds in kind. Jamie, noticing the atmosphere is heavy, decides it's time to leave. The couple goes to say goodbye at the door, and when he leaves, Tim comments that Jamie seems very interested in Millie, which annoys her, saying he'll start with his suspicions. But Millie plays along and says he should go after Jamie, and that seems to stimulate the creature. For Tim begins to act strange, as if assuming Jamie's desires, kissing his partner frenetically, even hurting her lips without noticing. Millie pushes him away and questions what is happening. The guy tries to justify himself, but Millie is very shaken. Later, while the couple sleeps, Millie feels a weight in her hair and asks Tim to get off her, but receives no answer, and upon turning, discovers Tim is swallowing her hair. Millie struggles intensely to free herself, and when she finally succeeds, Tim appears not to understand what happened. The next day, Tim is in the bathroom and shows no memory of the episode. Only then he sees something in his tooth. He begins to pull a strand of hair stuck in it, and this frightens him. Tim prepares for his show, and Millie says he should not go, but he insists he is fine. She asks if they won't talk about last night, but he claims he remembers nothing. Millie then leaves him at the train station, but as she begins to walk away, Tim starts feeling ill again. The man tries to control himself, even hitting his legs to avoid losing consciousness. Tim then abandons his bags at the station and starts heading toward the school. Kath offers to spend a few days with her friend, but Millie refuses, seeming to think she is making a fuss over nothing. While talking to Kath, Millie notices Tim walk to school and decides to hang up. Millie soon goes out to find her partner and asks why he is not on the train. Tim says he needs her. She takes him to the school's bathroom, and Tim says he needs to be near her, so they share an intimate moment. Millie is happy he finally sought her and comments next time it should be a safer place, but remembers now he must go. When they try to part, they realize they are stuck again, but this time in an even stranger way. Millie then realizes someone was listening outside and asks Tim to be quiet. The student who was listening quickly leaves. With effort and pain, she manages to separate them, but soon someone knocks on the door. While Tim hides, Millie decides to go out. Outside, the boy had called Jamie. He asks if she knows that bathroom is for boys, and Millie cannot explain the situation. Jamie notices something strange about her, but believes it's just discomfort and sends the student back to class. Before leaving, he notices Tim's sneakers in the bathroom, but chooses not to say anything. They return home, and she asks if he is trying to ruin her life because he doesn't look for her for months, and when he does, it has to be at her workplace. During the argument, Millie asks him to leave for good, but Tim replies he cannot because he cannot control his actions. He asks for help, but she ignores him and starts to leave. He asks where she is going, and she says she will clean up his mess as always. He asks to go with her, but she says she is not his mother to make all his decisions, but is starting to think he is like his mother. Tim does not understand what she means, and Millie says it's simple. Like his mother, she is also living with someone dead. Millie goes to Jamie's house. He opens the door and asks the reason for the visit, and Millie apologizes for earlier. Jamie says not to worry, problems are normal. Jamie, seeing she is not well, asks her to open up, and she says she and Tim had a big fight. Jamie invites her in, and they begin a more personal conversation. Jamie asks if she really loves him. This question leaves Millie quiet, but she answers yes, she loves him. She changes the sad subject and asks if he always lived alone because she saw his picture with another person. Jamie replies he wasn't always alone and begins to talk about his past relationship when Millie is startled by Tim outside. She quickly invents an excuse and goes to meet Tim. The guy says he didn't know where to go and tries to approach Millie. She makes an unpleasant face, but now it seems they are connected. Tim is in his studio trying to muster the courage to answer messages from his group, but gives up and goes looking for Millie because she doesn't answer his calls. He goes to the bedroom and finds her lying down. He again apologizes and leaves. Tim takes his medication to try to relax. He again starts investigating the disappearance of the couple. He manages to get a location that points exactly to that cave, which surprises Tim. He begins to compare the location where the couple disappeared, and by zooming in, he can see it's the same spot where they got lost. And when he starts to dig deeper, the site disconnects on its own, and he tries to reconnect, but the internet goes out. Tim insists until something comes running from the dark toward him. This scares him, and he falls to the floor. Tim manages to see someone through the glass of the door and calling for his girlfriend. No one answers. And the creature begins to mimic his steps, and when he approaches the door, the glass begins to tremble, and we see someone levitating behind the door. Tim gathers courage to open the door, and Millie falls on him. She is unconscious, and he desperately tries to wake her, even slapping her, which actually works. Millie doesn't remember what she was doing and asks what happened, so they go to talk at the table. She thinks maybe it was a seizure. Tim quickly dismisses that theory. Her nose won't stop bleeding. Tim says something happened to him in that cave because he is acting like a madman. He shares his theories and even mentions the couple, but Millie in a way does not want to believe him. But he recounts everything that has been happening to them these days, even the part where they get stuck together. Millie cannot explain any of his theories, and Tim asks her to touch his hand, but she finds it ridiculous and says she will sleep in separate rooms. He agrees and says they must keep distance. When she goes to the room, she pauses and begins to act strange, saying she no longer wants to live with him, nor wants him in her life. They go to sleep, and later we see Tim's body being carried through the house. He wakes and realizes his body is moving on its own. Tim tries to resist this, but the creature begins to twist his bones, and something moves in his belly, causing enormous pain. Tim manages to hold on to the gaps of the room and realizes something is very agitated in his girlfriend's room until the door opens and the monster begins to control their bodies. It makes them touch to fuse, and Tim asks that they work together and try to get the medication because it will relax their muscles. She manages to get them, and they begin to take the meds frantically until both pass out. Tim awakens and realizes he is tied. He quickly discovers Millie intends to separate them painfully. She begins to give him whiskey and pays no heed to his warnings. While they argue, the thing begins to manifest again in their bodies, and Tim now agrees with her painful method and asks her to do it quickly. She does it swiftly, and they remain distant from each other to avoid the risk of sticking together again. Millie wants to go to the hospital, but Tim disagrees. However, he sees no options, and Millie discovers she left the keys at Jamie's house. Tim says he will wait there, and when she turns her back, he quickly runs into the house. He grabs ropes and a flashlight. Millie arrives at Jamie's house but does not find him there and sees a sign like those on the trail. Tim is already in the cave, and as he walks, his foot gets stuck in the slime that quickly reacts to touch. Millie, while searching for her keys, begins to hear noises coming from a certain place in the house and decides to check. She finds a TV. When she approaches, she sees a video of the church Jamie had mentioned earlier, with that same giant bell at the cave entrance. Tim, walking through the cave, finds a picture of a humanoid creature with two bodies, which terrifies him, and at Jamie's house, Millie sees the same thing. She continues watching the video and sees the members of the religion performing a kind of ritual. This terrifies her, seeing it all. The tape stops, and Jamie appears behind her, saying that that was the happiest day of his life. While in the cave, Tim is attacked by a creature that reveals itself to be the missing couple. The creature approaches him, and he finally manages to free himself, but the creature is on top of him, and so he screams for his beloved. Jamie approaches Millie and makes a cut on her arm to quicken the process while Tim fights to escape that creature. He manages to stab it and escape the cave. While Tim rests, Millie is returning home. Tim takes the knife and decides to go back too. The couple soon meet, and she asks to keep distance, and he says he already knows, and she asks if he went to the cave, but there is no time to answer. They begin to be dragged toward each other. Tim asks her to be calm and says he thinks he knows how to stop it. Tim then frees himself and approaches Millie and asks her to trust him, and she frees herself as well. Before everything, Tim declares all his love for her. Tim asks her to close her eyes, because it will not end while one of them lives. While they talk, Tim sees a lot of blood on the floor and quickly tends to Millie. Millie then says goodbye to her beloved and dies in his arms, but Tim decides to save her by joining her. But Millie does not want that, yet Tim says he cannot survive without her and will endure the worst with her. Tim puts on their favorite song, and they begin to dance as they start to merge into each other. Sometime later, Millie's parents arrive for Sunday dinner, but who greets them is someone totally different and with a strange voice, and thus the film ends.